So I'm Ryan Hilton. I'm the CEO of Black Throne Productions and Pale Horse Productions, which has kind of been absorbed by Black Throne Productions. We're basically a record label operating out of Toronto. We work with mostly doom, heavy psych, stoner rock, shit like that. We also do like show promotion, tour booking. Got a couple people in the Quebec market working with us.
Nice.
So we've got my good buddy Frederick from Sons of Arrakis. He's kind of helping us book a lot of Quebec. Got Jean-Michel from Subsun. He's helping us book Ottawa. And between those, we're kind of trying to make our own sort of tour routes for, touring bands, shit like that, right? So yeah, we do tour booking for some of the bands on the label, some outside of the country bands. We've got a kind of like a side division of Black Throne that's Z Hollow Studios, Z Hollow Studios. That's my buddy Zach. He's also the co-owner of Black Throne Productions. So he does mixing, mastering. He's kind of a big part of our label and does all basically like if we decide to work with a band and they need mixing, mastering, recording done, he kind of handles all of that and makes some really good sounding stuff. He was kind of a big part of our first release with Aux. They reached out and asked if we happened to know anybody who was doing recording, and at the time we had like nobody like on the roster. We were kind of like a hopeful wannabe record label, but we had like nobody. And they like asked if I knew anybody because I was promoting shows for them. And I was like, yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, like I know this guy Zach who works with me, and long story short, they basically went in within that month. We signed a good deal with them, and he recorded just some amazing, shit that they did. Like it was incredible, and hearing like how he, mixed and mastered everything, like it really drew the sound out that Chris from Aux wanted, and like it's cool to like see it all kind of come to life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got like recording, mixing, mastering there. Some of the bands, depending on what kind of release that we're doing, we'll do like some merchandise for them, like CDs, T-shirts,
Nice. Awesome.
whatever, stuff like that. The main bread and butter right now is kind of vinyls, and
Awesome.
it's been we've been about a year since our first release with Aux, which was December 2nd of last year. That was our first vinyl release. And by the end of this year, I think we're expecting to have 7 total out.
Nice.
We've got like one record coming out with Occult Witches. It was from their previous release in July. We just signed a deal with them. Awesome band, like super 70s occult rock, kind of stoner rock, sort of stuff like that. Me and the CFO of Black Throne, Paul, we went and checked them out in July, and we saw them playing in Montreal with Sons of Arrakis and Low Orbit, and like I just remember we like looked at each other and we were like, holy fuck, like these guys are like the fucking best. Like, and I think we had a few drinks at that time, but we were like, man, we gotta fucking sign these guys like immediately. Never met them before, and then we talked to them outside and we were like, guys, how are you not on a record label yet? And they were like, well, no one's talked to us. Are you a record label? And we were like, fuck yeah, dude, like let's sign a fucking deal. And yeah, it turned out really fucking cool. Anyways, a long way to explain basically what we do,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically the main thing.
And where are you from? Where do you reside?
I live in Port Credit. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, moved up to Canada about 10 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah. Main influences growing up. I think I had a lot of inspiration. At the time, I didn't realize it, but I think now that I've grown older, like it's very apparent in my life that my father was kind of like a big inspiration. And like a lot of like kids and their parents, like there's always that awkward sort of period where you don't want to listen to anything, right? But I think at the end of the day, like I realized my father was like a really hard worker. Like he was always managing multiple jobs at the same time, providing for the family and doing a lot of stuff like that. And I think that was kind of, at the time, I didn't really appreciate it for what it was. But now that I've kind of grown up and I understand what work and bills are,
Exactly.
I think it's kind of had a lasting effect on me. Him, my older sister, especially. She kind of was like, I guess, inspirational to me in terms of like finding myself and supporting me and kind of just this weird environment that I grew up in. Yeah, and I guess personal influences, those would be the two. And I guess my older sister also would fall into my musical sort of inspiration as well. Her and her husband, my brother-in-law, they were kind of the ones who sort of ushered me into music, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so what got me into punk, metal, and hardcore? Let's see. So yeah, like I said, I grew up in a very religious home. Some people have called it like cult-like in a way. So I never really had a chance to get into music without being, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess outright about it, like open about what I was
Yeah,
into. So everything I was listening to had to be like super hidden, which I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who
yeah.
have that experience, right? But I remember going on like Yahoo Music at the time, like back in, oh man, like 2005 maybe, and like looking at videos of like Yellow Card and Green Day and My Chemical Romance and oh man, I don't even remember some of the other ones. But it was like like more of like the pop punk kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, right? It was funny, like I always had to like clear my browser history after like searching it up, right? So there was
Usually something different you clear in from.
exactly right.
Sorry.
But yeah, like it kind of evolved from that. Like I was only used to listening to like church music, even like Christian rock was like that was sinful. You couldn't
Right.
listen to that, right? So I was very, under the radar about everything I was listening to, and it kind of hit me all at once. It was like this culture shock of, oh my God, like what is all this music that I've never heard of? Like I'm 13, 14 years old, and why have I never heard this before? So yeah, I started going down that rabbit hole and started listening to like every type of music. Man, like it was pretty wild. I was listening to like Bullet for My Valentine, like Dead Kennedys, like I said, Yellow Card, Green Day, Crass, even like
Yeah,
some of these old Ramones, Sex Pistols, like all the classics. And I was kind of just I was like a sponge. I was kind of like absorbing it all, right? And I feel like that kind of like really it just really got me hooked on it. And the fact that it's like you're not supposed to be doing something, so it's like, hey, that fact alone makes me want to do it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it kind of it's sort of like you're not supposed to do it, and because of that, it just made me want to do it even more. Like it was like the taboo thing, right?
Yeah.
And really, it's not taboo at all. Like it's rock and roll, right? So who cares at the end of the day, right? But I feel like it really just made me become more just more into it and more interested, and I didn't want to get away from it. You know what I mean? And yeah, like just I remember like going to bed like at night, and like I had like a little CD player, and I always put on like headphones, and like I always had to like keep it like under the pillow, like
Yeah.
and just finding ways to be sneaky about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was just the idea of not being allowed to do it that made me really
Wanted
into
to-
it, like the rebellious nature,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? So first official concert uh, was at a mega church. It was this band from Australia called Hillsong, and they were super Christian, religious
Yeah.
rock band sort of thing.
My favorite song.
Yeah, it was weird. I was into them a lot, like as a kid, because like growing up religious and all that. It was interesting though. It wasn't like I hesitate on calling that my first real concert, but in the terms of there was a band playing and it was
Music, yeah.
rock esque music, and there was like 1,000 people there. It was a concert, right? And it was cool, like good musicians, whatever. In hindsight, a little bit corny, but I mean, hey, like it is what it is. Like good musicians, and they're doing what they believe in. So hey, good on them, right? So I think that was my first. I was maybe like I want to say like 11 or 12,
Yeah, yeah.
12 at that point. And I think that's kind of also what kickstarted like a lot of my interest in music was because like the church I grew up in, like the only music there was like a piano and it was like all hymns
Organs
and
yeah.
yeah, you know, like hey, piano's cool and all that, right? But you kind of want a little bit more oomph sometimes. So I think that was my first experience ever hearing the sound of like a full band live, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is like," and like which is saying something too because it's not like it was like heavy riffs, and it's not like there was a
Yeah.
mosh pit, and it's not like you know people were headbanging, but it was kind of cool because there was like an energy behind it that I had never experienced before, and like I said earlier, like I had never even heard of rock music before, so
Yeah.
it was kind of just like again like another culture shock to me, right?
Stepping stone, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was kind of cool, you know. Like I probably wouldn't enjoy it to this day. Like I'd probably be like, "What the hell is this?" Because I'm a little bit desensitized to like doom and black metal and stoner rock and hardcore. But you know, it was enough, and like it kickstarted my interest. And then I guess fast forward another, I want to say maybe 5 years. My first punk show snuck out on a Saturday night. Was supposed to be staying at a friend's house, and we both ended up going to this like garage show. And it wasn't like a big show or anything. Couldn't tell you the name of the band. No fucking clue who it was. It was a couple of local bands. They had like no draw. There was maybe like I say they have no draw, but they maybe had like their 10 friends each. So maybe 20 people at this little garage show out in the middle
Nice.
of the boonies in Virginia, like out
I was gonna
literally
say
out in the middle of
Virginia,
nowhere. Yeah, literally like out in the middle of nowhere. Like it was just like a house, and there was like
Awesome.
nothing around it. So it was really cool. Like my first time ever seeing anybody drink liquor. My first time ever seeing anybody drink beer. It was just
Wow.
it was the weirdest like experience. And I didn't partake at the time. I was like, oh man, this is. I feel bad for doing this, you know, like, but it was a cool experience because it was like just so much like it was like that same rock band energy from before, but like just like ridiculously more energy. It was just like insane, man. Like, and I was like, holy fuck, this is like the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Like the whole mosh pit, like I'd never seen a mosh pit before, didn't even know what one was. Like,
Yeah.
people were crowd surfing. Like I said, there was only like 20 people too, so so it was a cool experience, man. I wish I could remember the name of the band, but like at the time, like I didn't really care to find out, you
You're
know.
just there having fun.
Yeah, I was just there having a good time, and it's kind of like stuck with me, you know, like since then, and been like seeking out shows like that since then. Like I book a lot with like you know like venues like legitimate venues, right? But I think there's still a certain sort of what's the word I'm looking for? A certain sort of appeal to you know those underground DIY
Small,
shows. Yeah, those small
Indie
shows where
shows.
yeah, like 20 people show up, and you know it's like you're not looking for 100 people, and you don't have to worry about what the payout is. You're just there, you know, having a good fucking time, right? Yeah. So I guess first favorite show I ever saw was for this band, World Inferno Friendship Society. They're unfortunately the singer's passed away at this point, but they were one of my favorite bands. Like when I was younger, like 18, 19 years old. I saw them in Richmond, Virginia. On like a total whim, me and my buddies were just like, hey, let's make a drive and go see a show tonight. And so they're this really interesting, there's like 9 people in this band, and they call themselves circus punk.
Yeah.
So very, it's a very weird mix of, and like they're punk, not hardcore at all, but like definitely punk music, but very circusy. Like they've got like trumpets, trombones, fucking like
Nice.
they've got like yeah, I don't know. It was a crazy fucking like
Little mix.
experience to see. The lead singer, Jack Terrycloth was his name. He's a very animated person. Like he knew how to like captivate an entire fucking audience. Like he's very like just his speech, like how he interacted with the audience, like it was a fucking awesome show, even just because of that. But they had like people came out to the show dressed up like they were going to prom, and like they were like, hey, okay, like they played some song. I wish I could remember the name of it, but I don't. It was some song about I don't know, like dancing or something, and they called it like the goth prom or something, like. And they were like, "All right, it's time to dance now." And like we're in the like the instead of a mosh pit, there was just like a bunch of people like dancing, like weird, like I don't even know what kind of dancing it is, like fucking fancy dancing. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I was wasted at the time, and I was just like, what the hell is this, man? Like this is, but it was really cool. Like the music was like awesome. Like it had a great hook. It had a great beat. Like the lyrics are, all about like fuck capitalism, and like it's super punk, and like all about like bigging up like the working man and shit like that. So it was really cool. It was like my first experience because like I'd been listening to punk for a few years at that point, but that was like punk outside the box. And I was like, wow, music doesn't have to just be power chords and anger and shit like that, right? So yeah, that was kind of cool. I think next would be probably one of my first shows when I moved to Toronto. I went through this weird period in like when I moved to Toronto where like I couldn't work for about like a year or two because I was trying to apply for permanent residency, and it was just obviously I don't want to risk working and then get kicked out, right? But I ended up sorry, rewind a little bit. So I was in like this really weird mind state, like, like I can't work, everything sucks, the music scene here sucks, like this is all fucking bullshit, like, and I had a very defeatist attitude about like the music scene in Toronto, and then I got an invite from one of my buddies who was playing in a band called the Northern, and he invited us out to one of his shows, and I think it was like the Northern, Raider, and who's the other one? Salem Trials, I think it was. And I went out to the show, and like the bands were great, like they were killer, but it was just more of like an awakening for me. You know what I mean? Like, oh wow, like okay, yeah, there's cool fucking music here, like because like I came from Virginia Beach, and like the music scene there is a little bit more dead, but Richmond is only like an hour and a half drive away, and Richmond is fucking it's incredible. Like you've got everything there, like Guar, fucking like Lamb of God, and all that shit, right? So I think I was in this weird mind state where I was comparing Richmond to what I knew of Toronto, which at the time I didn't know shit about Toronto. And it just I took this one show as an experience, and I was like, wow, like this is fucking awesome. Like it was at Hard Luck. Craig Rose was putting it on, and it was a crazy fucking show. Like. And like it wasn't packed or anything, but there was just that energy. Like when the energy's there and people are digging what's going on. Bought a lot of like T-shirts from the band. Still got the T-shirts to this day. It was super cool. Like, and it was like a core memory almost in a way where I was like, okay, maybe like it's not as bad as I thought here. And then I kind of slowly started to get my feet wet with the Toronto scene again. I think my all-time favorite show, like ever, would be this show that one of the bands on our label, Aux, they just randomly got a show with Earthless, which is like one of my favorite bands of like all fucking time. Like if you've ever seen this band play live, like it's insane. Like seeing just the kind of set that they put on. Like it's a very long drawn out set. I think they played for like almost 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Like it was, but it's all just like stoner rock worship, so good, like shredding, psychedelic. Like you almost need to be on mushrooms to like get the full sort of like experience of it. But the guy's like he's one of the best fucking guitarists I've ever seen live. Like it's like I had to ask him, like it was so stupid. I had a chance to meet him at the end, and I wanted to like I wanted to talk shop and make a good introduction, and I felt like such a dumbass because all I could say was, "Don't your fingers get tired, dude?" I felt like he was like, "No, not really, man." I was like, "Okay, that was a fucking dumb question to ask." But like, no, it was super cool because like that was right when we had first started working with Aux. We had just put out their album, their full length album, like two months before that. I had a show in Toronto with Aux like 2 weeks after the Earthless show, and it was a month before the Earthless show. Chris reached out, and he was like, "Hey man, like I know you don't like us playing shows too close together, like in the same market in the same month, but like I just we got this really cool offer from like Earthless. Should we take it? And I was like, fuck yeah, you should take it, man. I was like, absolutely. And it was like literally just like a serendipitous sort of like, how the fuck like did that even happen? You know, like it was like one of the biggest names like in stoner rock, you know, and it was just super cool that they were able to land an opening slot for them. It was only the two bands, Ox and Earthless, and just being there at the show, it was like this. Just kind of like cathartic moment and sort of a validating moment that like fuck yeah, like we're working with some cool people here, you know. Yeah. Craziest thing, this venue called the Norva, uh, a venue in Norfolk, Virginia, and I don't remember who was playing. I think it was this band called Arbitrary Thoughts, and then I don't remember the other bands that were playing. Arbitrary Thoughts was one of, he wasn't like a friend of mine, but he was in the same high school as me. Um, there's this guy in the mosh pit with these long dreads, and like a lot of people don't believe me when I tell this, but like I swear to God, like it was a thing. He had like these long dreads down to his knees, like maybe a little bit shorter, who knows? But he had like rocks like tie wired into his dreadlocks and like pieces of glass and shit. And he was literally just in the mosh pit, just like swinging his head around, and like it was basically just like this cat of nine tails, just like swinging around in the pit, and like you could like see people like when you're moshing, you're not really
Paying attention.
yeah, you're not paying attention, and like if you know you get hit in the face with a piece of fucking glass, you don't really notice it when your energy's high, right? But like I started noticing a lot of people like they're like bleeding in their face and shit, and like they're like a lot of people are kind of like, what the hell is going on? And people started to like take notice of this guy's like he's fucking people up. And yeah, eventually like a lot of people noticed, and they had like fuck, there was like 15 people who just like jumped this guy, and like one guy like ripped out like one of his dreads and like beat the shit out of this guy in the pit. Like, it was pretty graphic, like, and it was maybe like, I want to say it was maybe like my fifth or sixth show, and I was like, what the hell goes on at metal shows, man? Like, but it was crazy, like, and I've told people that story, and they're like, no fucking way, man. Like, I was like, dude, the guy, he had to have been like on crack or something, like, because he was like, take a look at him, and like he was, yeah, he looked pretty fucked, you know, but like just like what kind of like inspires you to do some crazy shit like that, you know? But like he was, I'll give it to him. He was very good at headbanging, like you know, like it was crazy though, man. Like I couldn't believe, like at the time, like you wouldn't believe what you're looking at there, man. Like it's just what causes a person to do some weird shit like that. Like that's definitely the most craziest thing I've ever seen. I've had people try to like sneak into my shows at one venue, which I'll leave unnamed. It's mostly blacklisted in the scene. But like this one guy who was like a regular, he insisted on coming in like without paying, and I was like, no, dude, you're here to support the bands, like pay. And this was also when I was like new at promoting, and I didn't understand the concept of regulars. But he was also being a dickhead, and like so I didn't want to let him in for free anyways. And I was like, no, you gotta pay. And I kept sending him away, and he kept like slithering back in somehow. Like I always found him in the bar, and I was like, you need to get the fuck out, man. And eventually, like it was like the third time I confronted him at the door, and he just like he slammed his forehead to mine. He was like, "Do you know who the fuck I am? Do you know who the fuck I am? I'm gonna hurt you." And I was like, I have no idea who you are, man. Like, I was like, you just need to pay, man. Like, the band's gotta get paid, dude. And he was like, do you know who the fuck I am? Yeah. And he kept, like, saying weird shit like that. And, yeah, we had, like, this confrontation go on for, like, it was a solid, like, 2 minutes of him just, like, with his fucking forehead at mine. It was really weird and, inappropriate, you know? And I eventually started, like, pushing him back, like, through the door. And, like, I shoved him back through the door, like, out of the venue, and he like ripped off like half of my shirt, and it was a shame too because it was a really fucking cool shirt. Like,
$10.
Yeah, dude, it was like $10, man. Like, come on, dude. And he ended up like walking away, and he was just like holding up the piece of my shirt and like staring at me as he walked away.
One.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell, dude? Like, leave me alone. Like, don't ever come back here. And then the owner, he was super fucking pissed at me. He was like, "That's my fucking regular. You don't work security for me, and like you don't have the right to do that." And I'm like, "No, he's a fucking creep, man." Like he was like, "You fucking being weird, man." Like, so yeah, it was that was I would put that as like my second
Nice.
craziest thing. Yeah. So we started. I started Pale Horse Productions back in, I want to say, late 2021. And at the time, I had a really corny name for it. It was called Sounds of the GTA, which is what it was called on Instagram. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to do something involved in the music scene. And this was like middle of like COVID. Um, so I actually ended up joining this. It was like almost like an internship program with this group called Canyon Entertainment. And basically, what we were trying to do at the time was to find a way to bring live shows back to people during the time of COVID. And so basically, what we were doing was we were trying to do these online concerts. And so
Oh
we were
yeah,
reaching
I
out to like
remember
three or
this.
four people or three or four bands. And we were basically saying, like, hey, what we need you to do is record a live set in your jam space and just send that in, and then at the time that we air this, we need you to be available for 30 minutes afterwards for a Q&A sort of
Yeah.
session. And it was a cool idea and whatever, but the more I was trying to like work with them, the more I realized they didn't give a fuck about like metal and punk and shit like that. Like it was all like pop music, and
Oh.
anytime like I suggested like a band, she was like, "No, no, you can't do that. Like nobody's gonna be interested in that." Like, and like I should have known in advance, you know, because yeah, I was like trying to introduce like death metal and black metal and doom
Yeah.
into these pop lineups, and it
Yeah.
was a little bit awkward. So I was able to like at least learn something from them and learn how to like strategize and like how to work with bands and
Yeah.
how to do all the correspondence and shit like that. And at the same time, I was in school for project management, so it kind of all it helped tie everything together. So I ended up like quitting the internship program because I was like, yeah, this is fucking weird. Like I
Yeah.
feel like it's forced. I'm not interested, you know. So I started Pale Horse Productions, and it was a very clunky start. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried to book a couple shows, and a few of them fell through because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so I basically started the platform by just reposting and posting about local bands on the Instagram, and that's kind of how I started getting like my first couple hundred followers. It was basically just, yeah, anytime I saw a band had a show, I would post their flyer and be like, hey, this is the promoter, and I would tag them and I would be
Yeah.
like, this is the band's playing, maybe you guys should go check out the show. And like it didn't get much traction at the time, but I think it started everything, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So I started doing that for a little bit, and then it eventually, once I was promoting enough people, like they were like, hey, who are you, what are you doing? So yeah, we some people were asking like what I was doing, like, hey, like, are you a promoter? Are you booking shows, or are you kind of just trying to help the scene out? And I was like, well, I guess I can, book some shows. So actually, the first band I started working with was the Slime. They're a good crossover thrash hardcore band out of Toronto. Signed on Curse Blessings. They ended up reaching out to me out of nowhere, and they were like, "Hey, man, we noticed that you're, doing some cool shit. Would you maybe want to book some shows for us?" And at the time, I was like, "Yo, to be honest, like I've never done this before, so you've
Yeah.
gotta let me like learn with you." And they're like, "Hey, it's totally cool. Like you can do whatever you want, do whatever you feel is right, and book a couple shows for us, and we'll hang and be friends, and it'll be a cool
Yeah.
time." And it actually turned out really well. I booked a couple shows with them my first couple months, and since then I've still booked a lot of shows with them, and they're all very good friends to this day. Like they're great people and they're a great band. But they kind of definitely kickstarted me into booking shows.
Okay. Yeah.
So started booking a lot of shows with them, with some other punk and hardcore bands. and things kind of just evolved from there. We I had always wanted to have a record label. I say always, but maybe rewind like 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
for I had wanted to have a record label, right? And this was kind of I guess we'll rewind a little bit. Me and the other co-owner of Black Throne, the COO, Zach, we were working together in construction for the longest time. And during COVID, we were just like, dude, like, we just want to see some shows. We want to put together some cool shit. We want to work in the industry. Like, we want to, like, we wanted to fucking be there.
Yep.
And we had an idea for a record label, but we didn't really have a clue how to start a record label and how to get there. So I guess Pale Horse Productions was my it was my catalyst to helping that dream become a reality. Because yeah, like if you're booking shows, you're networking, you're meeting cool people, you're doing cool things for people. If you're not fucking people over and only paying them $20 per show, like you're making contacts and friends, right? So yeah, like Pale Horse Productions really was the foundation of what we were doing for Black Throne Productions. And like I think I'd said earlier, once I had started booking some shows for that band Aux and started getting my feet a little bit more wet with the stoner rock and doom scene, that's kind of where everything sort of started to take shape, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, we worked with Aux for a little bit. We worked out a nice deal for them, and yeah, that's kind of what started Black Throne Productions back in, I want to say, May of 2022. So we've only been at this for almost 2 years now. But like since then, like that's kind of where everything's just like exploded, like exponentially. Like we had no idea that it was gonna become like this big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically the story behind it. So I think the thing I like the most has been kind of because my niche is kind of in stoner rock and doom, heavy psych, all that kind of shit. It's been really cool to see how the scene has been like building up, especially over like the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I think the coolest thing has been, like other than being involved in like meeting cool people and shit like that. The coolest thing has definitely been seeing my shows go from 20 people to like 70 to 80 people,
That's awesome.
like, and seeing like the scene build up, seeing like the bands making connections, and like just seeing people like
Show up.
exactly, yeah, just like show up and have a good time. And like sometimes it's not even about the music, like it's about just people just hanging, and just like, yeah, just seeing, like, to me, like what's kind of a big thing for me is building up like the scene in Ontario and Quebec and Canada in general for that niche of music. Like that's, for some reason, that's like very important to me, like, and I want to see that happen.
Nice.
And that's kind of like what I'm working towards. And the other guys at Black Throne, like that's kind of that's what we're trying to spearhead and make happen, right? So it's especially been really cool to see just how things have grown since then, and how we've expanded into Quebec now and Nova Scotia, and trying to get
That's awesome.
into New York, and now like we've got other bands like even from like New York and Italy and Argentina and Mexico, like who have like reached out to us and been like, dude, like the Canadian scene looks like it's blowing up. Like, what's going on? Like, what are you guys doing? Can we get a show? Can you book us a tour? So it's like it's a very cathartic sort of feeling. Like it feels like what we're doing has some meaning, and like we're
Definitely.
yeah, we're not just like preaching to deaf ears or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely the coolest thing, and kind of what keeps me going even through like some of the sort of crappy parts. Which there's not really many things I dislike about being a promoter. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. I spend a lot of my week basically trying to plan out shit that's happening like 6 months from now, which is it's kind of like it's kind of a weird thing to consider. Like, you're planning something that's going to happen 6, 7, 8 months in advance, and who knows what the fuck's going to happen. And that's kind of where like some of the shitty things come into play, because like you're working with people and you have like a good relationship, and then they're like, hey man, I've actually got to pull out of this, you know, and I can't do this anymore. And it's like, fuck, man, I just put like 5, 10 hours into this, and you're just pulling out, you know. But you know, life happens, shit happens, and whatever, you know. I get it. Like this kind of like the only, I wouldn't even call that a dislike, you know. It's just kind of it's all part of the fun at the end of the day, exactly, you know. Like it keeps things interesting, it keeps you on your toes, and like you don't want to be comfortable doing the shit, right? Like it's like you gotta be continually moving forward, and you know, making shit happen, right?
Progress.
Exactly. So it's like, you know, the dislike is sort of whatever dislikes there are about it. It's at the end of the day good for you. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's a learning experience overall. There have been, you know, like, you know, some people to work with who are a little bit more cold and, you know, like unappreciative, and you know, still at the end of the day it's like, hey, I get it, man. Like this is your side hustle, and you expect good shit, and that's cool, whatever, you know. But even still, like it's, I don't know, like it's it's hard to pinpoint something that you can specifically dislike. I feel like the good stuff out of it just completely outshines everything else, you know. Like, and I honestly don't spend much time at all thinking about like what the shitty parts of it are, because who cares, you know, at the end of the day. Favorite food? Yeah, close tie between sushi and Indian food, and both of which I had never had until I moved to Canada. And I want to say sushi for, I guess, the reasoning behind it. It was the first date I went on with my wife when I came to visit her in Canada for the first time. And I was like, ugh, raw fish, it's fucking disgusting. Like, but no, I tried it and I was like, oh my god, this is like the best thing ever, you know? And I think that kind of like, it's an addiction to this day, you know? And it's the same thing with like Indian food too. Like I had never had Indian food until I came up here, and it blew my fucking mind, man. Like it was crazy. Like, and those have both been like consistent dates for us, like in our 10 years together. Like, and it's just been a forever kind of, you know, revolving or, you know, sort of thing, you know? Yeah. So, useless talent. I can chug beer abnormally fast. And I think some people it's concerned before. I concerning for myself even. And I guess if we want to go a little bit more appropriate with the talent, I know a lot of Lord of the Rings lore. I can pretty much quote like any Lord of the Rings movie from beginning to end. And I know too much weird shit about it. I know that Aragorn broke his toe when he kicked the helmet in the Two Towers. I know that Samwise Gamgee got a piece of glass shoved through his foot in Fellowship of the Ring when he ran out in the water after Frodo. Just weird shit like that about Lord of the Rings. I watch those movies at least like twice a year, so and that's been like for the last 12, 13 years. So I know a lot of useless info about Lord of the Rings and the Tolkien world, shit like that. Yeah. Huge thank you to Steve from Stronger Than Never Videos for allowing me to come here and answer these questions. Hope you guys enjoy the video.